Welcome GRD 121 to part 2 of our slideshow images, our ps2 exercise for fall 2020. And we're going to be working on image editing in Photopea, and we're going to do it just like we would do in Photoshop. And I'm going to go through this process. I know I mentioned I would do it with the file that you can download and upload and download and upload, but I'm going to try to do it with Google Drive, but I'll try to do the easiest method. So I'll show you this. I'm going to click on the exercise in coursework to get to the description so I see the links, and this is the Google Drive link, and I'm going to click on this one first. And I'm logged into my Google Drive, not the one I shared from, but my Google Drive, and I'll just click on this. And again, instead of opening this up and not being sure of where the file is, I'm just going to leave this here and just download it. So I'm going to go over and download that. And you can see it's downloading here. And I'm not going to double click on it because for one thing, it'll open up in Photoshop. But I'm going to go to downloads and I'm going to go find it. And there it is. And I'm going to drag it up to my Google Drive because I won't have any problem doing that. That makes sense to me. I'm going to do that. So I'm going to go to my Google Drive and find this, and I'm going to drag it right into this folder. I have this GRD 121. Matter of fact, I could double click on this, and there's my other file that I worked on last time, and I'm going to drag this in here and upload it. And it's not a copy or anything, so I don't have to worry about it saying copy of or anything like that, but I can rename it, and I could right click on it and say rename. And I'm going to put my last name, first initial, and hit OK. And I'll X out on my upload, I'll X out on my rename, and now it's all ready to go. So I should be able to just double click on it. And I can close this thing before I do anything else. I can close this tab. I don't need this because I didn't open it this way, and I don't want to have two things open at the same time. So let me close that. And I'll just double click on this to open it into Photopea, but it'll now link to this file. So when I save, it'll incrementally save this file. And hopefully that method will work out for most people. And down here, I'm going to close up my download so it's not taking up part of my screen. And I'll zoom in a little bit at 200. That looks pretty good for what I need to do here. We're going to do primarily image editing, and we'll do it just like I would do it in Photoshop. And I'll try to show you some steps and methods that I would recommend as far as the bread and butter kind of stuff of image editing. And I know there's lots of fun and exciting things we could do with masks and cloning and all kinds of things, but this is the bread and butter kind of work, making images look better. These are inside images. Sometimes the color is a little yellow. Sometimes there's a lot of shadows and we need to fix things. So that's what we're going to do here. We're just going to fix things. And our images that we have here, the first one is kitchen, and it's just the guys in the kitchen, and we're just gonna cool it a little bit and just brighten up shadows a little bit, and that's about it. It's not a bad photo, it's just a little bit on the yellow side, and we'll just fix it a little bit. The next one here, holding sketches, we're gonna try to lighten it up a little bit. His face is darker, it's under a hat, it's in a darker hallway, so we're gonna bring out more detail in his face and his skin tones. We're gonna lighten up these pictures here so it looks better, so it's just an altogether better picture. And the next one, blue painting, we'll do similar kind of stuff on this side, kind of cool it a little bit, but we don't want to cool the painting because it's already blue. So we're going to kind of mask out the painting, not really mask out. We'll just use a lasso tool and just kind of mark an area and then select inverse and then do all our image editing to this part. So that'll be similar to the one before. And this one, you can see the problem with this, a lot of dark shadows, all this kind of stuff. Now, there's ways you could take the quick selection tool and just select these people and lighten them so that you're not affected by the windows in the back. And you'll see a theme here that when people take pictures, when you have windows in there, it really doesn't make for good indoor photos. That's why if you're a photographer, you probably take a lot of photos outside. A lot of great light and shadows, everything outside with sunlight. Inside, you don't get as great photos. You have artificial light, fluorescent light looks yellow a lot. You lose a lot of detail, and that's what we're going to try to fix here. So this one will just need a lot of the shadows updated. This one of chess, similar issue. People in front of a window. So you got light shining in here. You have a lot of detail missing over here in shadows. This guy's really oversaturated. His jacket's really oversaturated, so we'll try to fix some of that. And we'll just try to improve it as best we can. And finally, the Drew Barrymore one. You've probably seen this before. If you had CSE 103, we always do this to just lighten teeth. And we just use, kind of a blue cooling photo filter to kind of cool off the teeth. And then we use levels to brighten it a little bit to keep all the detail. So we don't want them bleached out or anything like that, but we certainly want the teeth to look better. So we'll do that, and that's a pretty easy one to do. So we're going to work our way down this list here. and I'll kind of even show you the sequence that I recommend using. So I'm going to turn everything off except the background, and then I'm just going to start from the top with the kitchen one. And what I'm going to do with the kitchen one first is I always like to attack the shadows first. Now there's not a lot of dark shadows on this, and if you didn't do anything with shadows it probably wouldn't be an issue, but I like to just check it first. So I'm going to go to Image Adjustments, Shadows Highlights, and of course this goes right in front of what we're doing, so it's hard to see what happened, but you could do the preview before and after, and you can see there's shadows here, shadows over there, not a whole lot. I'm going to put them down maybe half the distance, 25%, and just do a before and after, and it's lightening up a little bit in their faces, a little bit over there, so I think that looks pretty good. I wouldn't do a lot more adjustment other than 25%. I think that's just enough to kind of just brighten it a little bit without affecting these, real bleachy kind of areas. We have light coming in windows, we have glares coming on this plexiglass, there's reflection up here, so there's a lot of white areas. So we don't want to lighten up the photo, we just want to bring up some of the shadows a little bit. So I'll hit OK, and that was the shadows highlights that I worked on. And next I'll get rid of the yellowish tint, so I'll go to Image Adjustments, Photo Filter. And actually, one thing I just saw there, I'm going to go back to Open. And I should have pointed this out at the beginning. I'm going to go back to Open here, and I'll probably have to start this over. But all of these are highlighted right now, and I don't want to have all these layers highlighted. And even though I had these turned off, I had turned all these off, and they're all targeted. I'm on all of them right now. What you got to be careful to do, and I just noticed I caught that in the beginning, is kind of like you just want to be targeting that layer. And I didn't really notice it until I saw one of the filters said applying to all layers, and I was like, wait a minute, I don't want to do that to all the layers. And then I did a Image Adjustment, Photo Filter, and this one I like to go and change it to blue and hit OK, and then slide the filter all the way over and then just bring it up a little bit, probably somewhere around maybe 9 or 10 will be enough to kind of just cool it down a little bit, and I'll hit OK. And the last thing I'll do here before I sharpen it is I'll just check out levels. Now I probably don't have much to do with levels because the levels are pretty even all over. There's lots of dark pixels, there's midtones, there's lights, and I don't want to lighten it at all because I have a lot of bright lights here. I could tweak the midtones ever so slightly to the left, but I really probably don't want to, so I'm just going to X out of here. And I think what I did is fine. And the last thing I'll do on this is do a sharpen filter. So I'm going to go to Filter, and I'll go to Sharpen, and I'll go to Unsharp Mask, and I'll just do a little bit here. I like to keep the radius at 1 pixel. I like to start around 50 here, and then kind of look at the before and after. I just want it to pop just ever so slightly. Just get a little bit more texture and things in their faces, in the pizza and stuff like that, and that's about it. I could even go less here. Probably less is more. You don't want to over sharpen things. So I might put it at 40 and just check it one more time, and I think that looks good. It just gives a little bit more crispness to the photo, and I'll hit OK. So I did these 3 things: shadows, highlights, photo filter, Unsharp Mask to this layer. And I'll do a File, Save, and incrementally save. Now next what I'm going to work on, I'll turn this off and I'll turn this on, and I'll target this layer. Make sure you target the layer. You see it and you're on that layer. And what we're going to do with this one is lighten up his face a little bit. He's wearing a hat, so it's casting his face in shadow. His skin's already dark, so that makes his features even harder to see. So we're going to brighten that up, and we're also going to need to brighten up the paper too, so it looks a little bit more brighter. And we'll also take away the kind of the yellow cast to this. So we'll do all that, and it'll look a lot better. First thing I like to do is attack the shadows first. So again, on this layer, I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and go to Shadows, Highlights. And right away at 50, it does a nice job already. I could see if I do the before and after, it kind of brings out more detail in his face. Now I could take this down a little bit. I might take it down to 40. I don't want anything looking chalky or anything. I don't want to go, too bright and, make it look like there's light shining up. But, between 40 and 50 is probably good. Maybe I'll just do the difference at 45. And again, I'm just looking at before and after, and it looks a lot better. It's only kind of working on his face and a little bit down there, and it looks a lot better already. And we're going to use other adjustments on this, so I don't need to do everything with the shadows highlights, but that brings back detail in his face, and that's a big start. So I'll hit OK, and the next thing I'll do is I'll tackle the yellow cast, and I'll go Image Adjustments, Photo Filter, and I'll put it on blue. So I'm filtering it blue, and I'll bring it all the way down and then bring it up to like 10 and see how that looks, and do a before and after. And it definitely takes away the yellow. I think that's pretty good right there. 9 or 10 is probably pretty good. And I'll hit OK. And the next thing I'll do is I'll check, remember what's next? Levels. I'll go Image Adjustments, Levels. Now, we have a little room here. There's not a lot of highlights at the end. Now, there's highlights on his shirt and there's highlights on the paper, but I actually want to make the paper brighter, and I'm not worried about bleaching out his shirt because there's not a lot of detail here, so I could probably tweak the highlights here on levels. Remember, this is the darks, the shadows, and I don't want to darken shadows because I already lightened them, so I don't want to mess with them. And I just want to lighten the highlights, which will lighten the midtones as well. So I'm going to tweak the highlights a little bit, and I'll take them down to maybe like 230 or something just to start, and do like a before and after. And again, I'm kind of looking at the paper, so I want the paper to be brighter. And if I get down to maybe like 215, something like that, let me see what that looks like. There it is now. I think that's a little too much. Let me go back to like kind of 225. There's before. There's after, before, after. I think it looks better, and I'm going to go with that, like 225, 226 for the levels. And if you want to tweak midtones ever so slightly, you could a little bit just to brighten up everything, and I'll hit OK. And I think that looks a lot better. And you could go over here to kind of look at where you started. You kind of go here to the shadows highlights and go back here, and you can see big difference from where we started to where we're at. Looks a lot better. And then if I want to do the sharpen here, I'm going to go to filter. Now, I don't trust this last filter. I was trying to do this earlier, and I don't trust it. So I'm going to go back to filter, sharpen, unsharp mask, and just do it from the beginning and make sure I put this back at 50 or close to 50 and put this back at like 1.9 or something like that is okay. Something like that. Make sure this is at 0. So 0.9, 48, that's probably good. You could put on before and after. You shouldn't see a lot, just a little bit. It kind of adds a little crispness to the photos, adds a little crispness to the drawings as well, so I could see those a little better because that's what he's showing us. And I'll hit OK, and I think that's good. So I got 2 done, and I'll do 1 more, and then I'll take a break. So I'll turn off the visibility here, and I'll turn on the visibility on blue painting, and I'll click on here for blue painting because I really want to make sure I target this layer. So be very careful about this, that you're on these layers, and before you do anything else. Now, what I'm going to do here, same thing before, I'll lighten up his face a little bit because he's kind of in shadow because looks like the light's coming from the other direction. So we'll lighten up his skin tones a little bit so we see more features. We'll un-yellow it a little bit so it looks a little cooler. It doesn't look so yellow, especially compared to the painting. And we'll just kind of brighten things up a little bit all over. And we don't want to make the painting more bluer, so we got to be careful with that. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of almost eliminate the painting from what we're going to do. So to do that, I'm going to go to my lasso tool over here and just select the painting because that's easy to select because it has a lot of straight lines. So I'm going to go over here and hold down on this corner here and choose the polygonal lasso select. And you'll get like a crosshair. And I'm going to start here and kind of go around. These will click kind of like the pen tool. So I'm just going to click and then go here to the corner and click and go down to the corner and click and go over here. Go past a little bit because it does come out of the picture. So I'm going to click, and then when I go here, it'll follow a little better if you go out. You could actually, it looks like it's going out too far, so I could like go here and then go straight up again to follow it a little bit better. Because it doesn't matter where you are when you're outside the image anyway. And then to finish off, just click on where you started. Just click once, and that should be good. Now, it doesn't make that movement like the way Photoshop does, but that is selected right now. You have a selection. And I actually want to select the opposite. I want to select everything else. So I'm going to go select and select inverse. Now it's selecting everything but the painting. So everything I do will affect all of this and not the painting. So when I make it bluer, I'm not going to make my painting bluer. So I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and I'm going to attack the shadows. And if I look at before and after, already I think it looks better. And I might take it down to like 45. And already that looks better. His face looks like in the same light as everything else. I'm not seeing a lot of shadow, and I wouldn't notice anything down there. So that looks better already. And I'll hit OK, because that's all I have to do there. And then I'll attack the yellowness. So I'll go to Image Adjustments, and I'll go to Photo Filter, and change this to blue, and hit OK. And take this slider all the way down, and then bring it up to like 10 and see what things look like. And I'll kind of click on and off. And again, because this is a blue painting, or it has a blue frame on it, it's kind of bluish in here, I don't want to make this all bluish. You know, I don't need to make this completely blue, but I just want to take the yellow tint off. So if I go to 9-10%, it's enough to take the yellow tint off some of these areas and look pretty natural. So that's what I'll do. I'll leave it like at 11. And I'll hit OK. Again, I don't want to match it blue. I just want to take the yellow tint off and hit OK. So that looks pretty good. Now, I'll check levels. I shouldn't have much to do with levels because I think it looks pretty good. I don't want to brighten it too much because I have a lot of light areas, but I'll check out levels. It's good to look at the histogram, which is what you look at when you look at levels. When you go Image Adjustments, Levels, this thing is like a histogram, and it's showing you the level of darks, midtones, and highlights, and there's a lot of highlights there. So if you did anything, I wouldn't mess with the highlights. I would actually go to the midtones and just kind of brighten it maybe slightly, and that's about it. And I'd hit OK. And then if you want to do a sharpening on that layer, you could go to Filter, just go back down to Sharpen, Unsharp Mask again. Again, these settings aren't being saved, and I don't trust them right now. I don't know them enough because I don't work in Photopea that much, so I don't want to mess things up. So I'm going to put this at 1 right now, or 0.9 is probably okay. And I'll leave this around 40, 44, something like that. Somewhere between 40 and 50 is probably fine. And I'll hit OK, and that's it. And I'm going to take a break here and then finish up with the last 3, and then we'll export our images. So I'm going to go to File, Save Google Drive, so I'll save where I'm at. Oh, you know what? One thing I noticed just as I saved, before I go, I'm going to go back here in time, and I'm going to go back 1 because I'm going to go back before I did the Unsharp Mask. And I thought I mentioned this, but I forgot to do this. We want to make sure that we do Select, Deselect, because we don't want to sharpen everything but the painting. We want to sharpen everything. So I'm going to go back and do deselect. So that'll take away that selection. I forgot to do that. I actually recorded this twice because I had different problems pop up as I was recording, and I thought I did that. So make sure you deselect. And now I'm going to go back and do the filter over. So I'm going to go to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask, and I'll put this at like around 1 or close to 1. Put this around 40 or so, and that looks good. So now I'm done with that, and I'm going to move on to the next one. I'll turn off this, I'll turn on ISC, and I'll make sure I target that layer, and I'll do File, Save, and save my Google Drive version. If you happen to be doing one where you don't have it in Google Drive, this would be a good time to just do File, Save as PSD, and just download it. That way, if you're taking a break or anything, you just have a saved version of it as far as what you did so far. Because I'm not sure what save does. Sometimes it says save here, and I'm not sure where that saves it. I don't think it saves it in the cloud anywhere, so you got to be careful with that. But if you're in Google Drive, if you save it right now, you should be okay. And we'll take a break here for our part 2, and we'll finish up hopefully in our part 3.